Hello, fellow Rebel Capitalists. Hope you are well. We're back with my good buddy Robert Barnes, and we've got a lot of Epstein stuff to talk about, my friend. I'm going to go ahead and give the ball to you and let you run with it. And then I'll give you my thoughts on this whole thing. But long story short, I mean, who didn't see this coming, right?
Well, no doubt. I mean, you go back to I think it was 6 months ago, 8 months ago, when we did a big breakdown on Epstein and said that the reason why the globalists or all the governments would not want to fully disclose the Epstein files is because it would implicate how our power structure operates throughout the Western world.
Implicate all of them.
Yeah,
all of them, Robert. That's the thing. And, when he offs himself, supposedly, and then all of a sudden, all this suspicious stuff with Trump not releasing it and Bondi and Bongino and it's all doesn't make sense unless you assume that everybody is in on it. And sure enough, basically every single person in power around the entire world was in on the Epstein deal to a certain degree.
I am concerned, George, that you're worried about this because the Dow is over 50,000.
Yeah. Well, in that case, who cares? Who cares,
yeah.
Right?
That's going to be a meme. So you get caught by your wife kissing some other girl. You'd be like, honey, why are you worried about this? The Dow's at 50,000. Then you get pulled over by the cop on the traffic thing. Yeah, well, why are you pulling me over going 125 and a 70, Mr. Officer? The Dow's over 50,000. So there's
it's not even a cheating on your wife Tiger Woods thing.
Yeah.
It's a cheating on your wife pedophile thing.
Yeah. So I was eating a baby.
All the people that we have elected, not all, I'm exaggerating here, but it seems like almost every single position of power around the world is occupied by someone who had something to do with this ring of pedophilia.
Correct. And basically the most sickest, I mean, I've always liked this aspect of what Alex Jones explains. He goes, the world's not Republican, Democrat, Russia, Ukraine, China, US. It's humanity versus anti-humanity. And he goes, these globalist elites, I mean, you've talked about this with the Club of Rome going all the way back. These globalist elites do not see us as human beings. They see us as numbers on a board. They see us as cattle to consume, cattle to labor, or cattle for whatever sick objective they have. And literally, and that's why they degrade to the lowest possible level. They want to go a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further. And Epstein was the perfect middleman to supply all the appetites in Satan's shop. So they and the more depraved, the more severe, the more he had a market edge because he was willing to do anything. And that's how he got into positions of power from the get-go. So pretty much everything we predicted 6 months ago, now people have seen. I remember we took some heat at the time. But, now I don't think anybody's going to be pretending, other than maybe Michael Tracy and a few other people, that the Epstein files are a nothing burger, that there's nothing to see here. Nothing.
Even Trump said that, right? I mean, even Trump came out and said that they're nothing burger. And anyone that has, this is just a big left-wing conspiracy.
Yeah, a hoax. Now, here's my operative hypothesis as to how they tricked Trump. Because I had long said that when the Epstein files are fully disclosed, that I thought there'd be more exonerating than incriminating information on Trump, that there'd be confirmation he ratted out Ghislaine Maxwell, ratted out Epstein, that he helped victims and victims' lawyers, helped police. All that's now been confirmed. But I think how did they snooker him to exonerating the deep state and incriminating him in a file that otherwise would more naturally exonerate him and incriminate the deep state? It's because Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche lied to him. And I think the deal they cut was this. They said, we're going to take the Justice Department and treat it as a personal cash register for our lobbyist pals. They just got the antitrust Gail Slater fired. She was the last honest, ethical prosecutor that was a political appointee in the entire Trump Justice Department, to my knowledge. And she was the one saying we shouldn't let. It's one of those places where the libertarian right, libertarian left, populist right. They call it the horseshoe. They're distant on a lot of issues, but they unite on issues like antitrust because we all believe in free markets. We don't like monopolies. We don't like monopolists, particularly unnatural monopolists who are manipulating the law, manipulating their economic power, manipulating other things to do bad things in terms of jacking up prices, reducing competition, driving out a small free market enterprise. You have this going on in the grocery industry, healthcare industry, pharmaceutical industry, all the big industries. Why is our beef so high in the United States? Because four people used federal regulatory control. Without the federal regulatory control, they couldn't do this. But through the regulatory control, only they can scale up to meet the regulatory requirements, creating a unnatural monopoly that jacks up and inflates prices.
Right.
And so she was going to take them all out. That was her mandate, was to use the antitrust power and reinforce it Teddy Roosevelt style. Instead, Pam Bondi just took her out because instead they see it as a shakedown opportunity. Hey, Hewlett-Packard, you got a little bit of a merger problem. Hey, just make the right donation. All problems will go away. They just donate to my friend here, Mike Davis, or my friend here, Arthur Schwartz, these corrupt corporate lobbyists. And that the entire Justice Department has become a cash register for these corrupt rogue actors in such a brazen way. You can see it reported in Semaphore, Axios, Bloomberg. I mean, everybody knows in the corporate press what's been going on and how it's now going to get much, much worse. But the only way they could do that is to not prosecute the deep state, not prosecute people connected to January 6th, connected to COVID, connected to various forms of Russiagate, connected to lawfare, connected to the censorship. Those people all had to walk because otherwise they'd blow the whistle on what was going on and take her down. So the deal was, hey, deep state, we won't prosecute you. In fact, we'll cover up the Epstein files and we'll get Trump to sign off on covering up the Epstein files. And in exchange, you let us use the Justice Department as our personal cash register, and we'll line our pockets with all these lobbyists are making $1 million a pop, $2 million a pop, $3 million a pop, ridiculous sums of money. And I tell people, like, I don't mind greedy. I don't mind stupid. Just don't put them together. And that's what we got right now running Washington, D.C.
Yeah, but what's amazing to me is you go back to, I mean, just a couple months ago, not a couple weeks ago, for heaven's sakes, and you say that, well, this Epstein deal, this is huge, and it probably, almost every single person in power is likely involved, or else why would they go to such extremes to cover it up? And then everyone points at you and calls you a conspiracy theorist. Oh, no, that's just conspiracy theory. Oh, no, and then they just excuse it away with, XYZ rationale. And then you sit there and you say, well, wait a minute, look at the evidence, look at the facts. You're telling me that this isn't trying to be swept under the rug just to protect people in power, because there's so many people in power that are guilty of being in this pedophile ring. And at the end of the day, if we open up Pandora's box, we see that the people in power are quite literally evil. And if they weren't evil, they wouldn't be in power to begin with. I think that's really the main takeaway here for me, is that people have to realize that the people that gravitate to these positions of power are the worst people in our society. These are I'm talking about ethically, morally. They're the dregs of our society. These people are sociopaths, and that's what makes them, that's why they gravitate to positions of power over other people, because at the end of the day, they're eugenicists. They believe in this idea that we are over here and we're a separate breed of human being or whatever, that we're just better than everyone else. And who knows their belief system, but it's not based in what we would consider morality or ethics. And again, the fact that they're in power to begin with tells you that they gravitated to a position of power because they have an insatiable lust for power to rule over people, and therefore they're not the people that we want in that position. And it just, and now what's crazy is all of this is coming out and confirming how evil these leaders are, and nobody's doing anything about it. They're like, yeah, you get that CEO quit. Yeah, that attorney quit. Oh, that Goldman Sachs gal quit. It's on cover of CNBC. And then the next thing you know, it's just gone. And everyone knew they were crooked anyway. People should be out in streets with torches and pitchforks, in my opinion. What do you think? I'm just going to rant about this for the next 15 minutes.
It's the problem of the state. It's the best argument both libertarian and anarchists have, that when you decide you're going to give a monopoly on the tools of violence to a small group of people, and the legal right to use that violence, and in some cases, the exclusive means of violence, like nuclear weapons, military power, etc., then who is going to be drawn to that?
Right.
Who's gonna want that? Number one, and then number two, who's gonna have the skills or the mindset to get it? Who's going to be willing to sacrifice everything to get that position?
And when you say skills, be clear, Robert. What skills do you need to attain that position? You have to be good at lying. You have to be good at extortion. You have to be good at entrapment. You have to be good at deceit. All of these horrible, horrible characteristics, you have to be great at them to get that position of power.
To join the Epstein class, you have to have Epstein's toolbox and skill set. And that's the danger of giving in. Like, I often talk to my friends on the right or the left when they have a policy proposal. I'm like, the number one question you should ask yourself is, who are you giving the power to? Right. So you might think if that power was used nobly and morally in a monarchical form of government, like Curtis Yarvin and others advocate for, or conservatives sometimes want the federal government to have power in one case and not in another case. Like, you may think that if used rightly and righteously, that would be good. And I wouldn't dispute a good king can be a good thing. The reality is kings don't usually produce good kings. They usually produce corrupt, bad people who do bad, horrible things. And now you just gave them the power to do it. You just gave them the legal right and the effective means of doing so. That's why I always say I'm a populist with anarchistic tendencies, because that's what our Constitution was predicated upon. It was with deep. The whole idea of the Second Amendment was not only there would be no standing army, but that the legal means of violence would be owned by the ordinary person, not owned by the government. And they would have to call them up as a militia to be able to wage war or use coercive violence against anybody anywhere. It was a true independent check on the abuse of power, because they knew if you give them the control of a national bank or over the money supply, or you give them control of the military, you're screwed. Sooner or later, these corrupt rogue sociopaths are going to take over, and they're going to run it for themselves at our expense. And we're just seeing what that looks like at scale. People that would see your young daughter as someone to exploit, someone who sees your baby and thinks, they might taste good with a little bit of this and that. I mean, it's just, it's
collector stuff, like literally.
Yeah, correct. It's like, I'll have that liver with a little bit of Chianti. I mean, it's that. That's who these people are. And this was normal conversation. You had Sultan saying, I love the torture video, bro. I mean, it's like, what? These people are just talking to each other in these language. A lot of time using code. Like, if anybody thinks all these rich elites really were worried about their supply of beef jerky, I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. That ain't what they're talking about. You can drop the G from grape and figure out what they're talking about there. The pizza references that are not about pizza. I mean, George, have you ever said, hey, let's have a pizza party, but I'm not sure how the seven of us are going to divvy up this one piece of pizza? I don't think so. We all know what these sickos are. It's like Alex Jones has been warning about this forever, but even Alex Jones was shocked by what he saw in the file. He was like, I thought it was this bad, but it's morally horrifying. I mean, they had underground cellars and on that island, that the basements that were unexplored that appear, and then there's the Zorro Ranch they never searched, where apparently there's dead bodies still located on the ranch. It's a level of moral horror that's difficult to process. And you got royals everywhere implicated, billionaires everywhere implicated, big tech bros everywhere implicated. The efforts to influence, you see confirmation for Roger Vere's hypothesis that there were bad faith actors trying to hijack Bitcoin, because Epstein is one of the people trying to hijack Bitcoin from the very early on stages, and with his allies and pals. So for the intelligence networks and infrastructure, because it was such a potential liberating threat against their concentrated financial power. So everything we've been saying for forever, we just see confirmed in black and white. And they're just trying to wonder how long they can run out the clock, how long they can suppress it, how long they can go around and say the Dow's at 60,000, hope everybody ignores it. I don't think that's a long-term successful strategy. I think sooner or later there's going to have to be Epstein accountability, or the governments across the West will collapse. You see in Europe, they're starting to recognize this. They have open criminal cases in Norway, France, and the UK as we speak. So the UK government will probably collapse within a month.
Explain that further, Robert.
So the Epstein government, and Mendelsohn was one of the lead neoliberal architects all the way back to Tony Blair. And he was one of the best pals of Jeffrey Epstein. He was the chosen ambassador to the United States by the Starmer government once Trump won. They had to withdraw him once it came out his name was in the files. What they didn't know was, remember, you've been pointing out, George, about How is it that certain predictive things like the interest rates turning negative in certain yields, that can predict what's going to happen? And you pointed out during COVID is like you'd almost think somebody has some inside information along the way.
Right.
Well, you don't have any doubts here. Here you have Epstein and Mendelsohn sharing here's what the British government's going to do next week. Here's how you can trade and buy and sell on it. So they were selling inside information on government action a weekend, not just all the perversion and the arms running and the human trafficking and the money laundering and the Ponzi schemers and all the rest, but all these big Wall Street. Does anybody think the Rothschilds were hiring Jeffrey Epstein for tax advice? I don't think so. There was some information. He was a tool of the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. And it's throughout all the files, but it was with government officers and officials giving inside deals. The Mendelsohn, what was shocked people was the scale of his involvement with Epstein, but that he was a key leading member of the Epstein class, and that he was trading on inside information, even to the detriment of the British people, to enrich the Epstein class. And now that that's documented, Starmer is very close and was brought up by Mendelsohn as part of the Epstein class. So I don't think he can survive. His approval rating is like 14% or something. It's unbelievable. Lowest ever in the history of British government. That he just goes. I think Starmer's done. I think Macron is holding on barely, thinly. I mean, you read these files and all of a sudden you think Candace Owens is prescient. You know what I mean? I mean, all the sick. I mean, she goes off on. I still think she's full of it and half crazy. But you can see where she comes up with some of this stuff when you see what's in the Epstein files. All these Mert's deeply unpopular. All the European governments are deeply unpopular, particularly the pro-war European governments. They're trying to take out Orban in Hungary, doing everything possible with the EU power structure. I think the EU ultimately, because of the Ukraine conflict, excuse me, but you add to that the Epstein files, I think the EU's days are numbered. I think that we will look back 10 years from now and say the disclosure of the Epstein files was the beginning of the end of the globalist elite control in the Western world. And the only question is what direction.
Great lengths to cover it up.
Yes, exactly.
If you would have just been paying attention and just open your eyes, and they were obviously covering it up to anybody who even looked at it, and just scratch your head and say, wow, I wonder what's going on there. And the obvious conclusion that you would have come to is that all these people of power, or in positions of power, are in on it. And I didn't even realize it wasn't just pedophilia. It was insider trading. I mean, all these things that you're talking about, it's just, I mean, at least the mob, were they into pedophilia? I mean, I don't even think they were. No,
the mob had standards. Yeah, even the mob had standards. Even Gaddafi had standards. I mean, some of the worst leaders in the world, even Stalin had some standards. This was too much. It was like when I was describing the Ukrainian Nazis. I was like, the Ukrainian Nazis were so insane during World War II that the German Nazis, the actual Nazis, were like, whoa, that's a little excessive, bro. I mean, that's when you know you've gone over the edge. And they were just it's at such a scale, and the degree to which it implicates everybody. Like, one of the things we've been long pointing out is that a lot of the UN refugee organizations, the Clinton Foundation refugee organizations, these adoption agencies, a lot of that have globalist ties that are bringing in a lot of the illegal immigrants and all of that. You dig into the illegal immigrant traffic. What happened was Robert Kennedy detailed 300,000 kids just vanished overnight. Where would you go if you wanted to target kids for future abuse purposes? You would go to places that have natural disaster. You would go to places that have wars. This was detailed in a book and made it a movie over a decade and a half ago about what was going on in the Balkans entitled The Whistleblower. So that was someone that just thought, if I disclose this to the UN, surely they'll do no, they ran that person out instead. Well, one of the head
playbook, Robert, they used it as a playbook.
Correct. That's exactly
right. We didn't even think about this. Great idea. War to get some young kids into the pedophile ring. Fantastic. Let's put that one on the list.
I know, it's like they took the Biden administration took like Orwell's 1984 and V for Vendetta and treated it as a script for their administration. Yeah. Aspects of the Trump administration is like, look, and the European governments are looking to South Park. Basically, it's a lot of South Park, right? South Park, PETA, they really love the animals, as it turns out, all that kind of thing. The Team America, World Police, I think that's what Hexa thinks we are right now. Yeah, America, F yeah, all of that, that routine. We're seeing that. And then remember the ICE raids, they go crazy. They go up to heaven to steal, and Kristi Noem's around shooting dogs everywhere she sees them. So you've got, But it's that on steroids.
Yeah, right.
And it reveals the scale and scope and severity of these and the sinfulness by any religious definition or spiritual definition. You don't have to be religious to
I mean,
recognize
simple. It's evil.
evil, pure, unadulterated evil. And these
Right.
are the people that, I mean, one of the head UN refugee people had to resign because they're in the Epstein files in a very negative light. The same with one of the prominent adoption agency heads. One of the prominent adoption agency heads brought her teenage daughters to meet Epstein. That's the level of sickness of these people. You had these royal elites in Norway. You had the queen asking for advice for her son, who, by the way, has been accused of rape many, many times. This is like, remember Girl with the Dragon Tattoo? There was the U.S. version and there was the European. It's like that. It's like watching it in live time and reading it through. He's getting pictures of 9-year-old girls, 10-year-old girls, 8-year-olds. There's all the discussions of babies, buying babies, eating babies. Just cannibalism, by eating people. All this crazy sickness. But once you realize these people, that the further evil they could go, the more powerful they felt. There's no greater power than the power of a baby, right? Because it's so, the degree of its depravity, these power vacuumed, empty-souled people, which drives them to seek and attain power to begin with,
Right.
and gives them the skill set to achieve it, is what leads to all of this. And if there isn't a comeuppance, like people are like, well, Barnes, the whole government will collapse. Remember, we talked about this the last time around, saying this is why they're going to try to hide it. I was like, any government run by pedophile, cannibalistic elites should collapse, for the love of God. Please collapse. Please. It's the ultimate condemnation of the centralization of state power. And the ultimate argument for libertarianism is the Epstein files.
Yeah. And also, too, if you remember when I was doing those videos on the World Economic Forum, and I was saying how they're Malthusians and how they're also eugenicists, and people just kind of slough it off. And remember, I got flack from the BBC on that one, calling me another conspiracy theorist. And that was way back in 21 or something like that. And I'm like, look, you don't realize how evil these people are. Just do a little bit of research and use some common sense, for heaven's sakes. And now you can see. I think that everyone that had that opinion was completely vindicated. So if you think the global elite, these Malthusians that want to lower the population, if you think, oh, well, there's no way that they would try to create World War III, some sort of nuclear war to reduce the population. Oh, really? You don't think so? They're doing everything that Barnes is talking about here, and probably worse. A lot of the things that hasn't even come out yet. And you don't think they would go so far as to try to create a nuclear war to reduce the Earth's population by 4 billion? The Thanos approach is what I call it. Of course they would. That's child's play, no pun intended, for these people, as far as their lack of moral, I was going to say lack of moral compass, but they don't even have morals at all to begin with. So fill me in on some of the details, because I've just kind of seen what's happening broad strokes. And you can tell by my reaction that I don't think people are as up in arms about this as they should be. Where do you see this headed in the next 6 months or so? Do you think that people will start to wake up, like the average Joe and Jane, and just become completely repulsed, disgust, and then also motivated to get these people out of office, and then be far more, let's just say, considerate about who they elect next time, but hopefully realize that anyone that you elect, there's a 99% probability that they're going to fall into this category. Because if they had the morals, if they had the ethics, I hate to say it, but if they weren't like some sort of crazy sociopath, they wouldn't be running for that position in the first place. And I know that I've said that a million times on this podcast, but people have to get that through their head.
Yeah, and you have to rally behind the rarity that is unaffected by it. People like, the only reason why we have these files is because Congressman Thomas Massey was willing to stand up against his own party, stand up against his own president, stand up against the deep state. His life has been threatened. They're spending $30 million. They will spend more money to get him defeated than any congressional race in the history of the House of Representatives in America.
Yep.
And I met him when I was up there. His whole, I was like, how are you guys? You got the entire deep state around the world, the most so powerful people in the world want your head on a stake, politically and probably literally. And you guys are all happy and smiling and laughing. And it's like, how is this? It's because he has no fear. He grew up a small farmer, and he believes in the American constitutional republic. And he's like, I'm only here for this. I'm only here. I didn't get elected for power. I got elected to try to help my community and stand for the principles we believe in. That's the only reason why I ran. So why would I do anything different? He doesn't even process all the things that all the sociopaths throughout the rest of that capital process.
Yeah. He's like Ron Paul.
He is. Oh, yeah. Just like Ron Paul, he's more undefeatable than ever. I mean, more vindicated than ever. Is what Ron Paul said about Israel first, what Ron Paul said about the war machine, what Ron Paul said about the surveillance state, what Ron Paul said about central financial systems and central banks and central planners, all confirmed. And it allows, it enables, and invites the kind of corruption we see on a daily, regular basis. That was Epstein. Wake up in the morning. Who am I going to corrupt today? What crime am I going to commit today? What sin am I going to commit today? How am I going to help get somebody else entrapped or ensnared in it? Like Steve Bannon was dumb enough to hang out with him for a year. I mean, God bless Steve Bannon, but he's got the worst, I've been saying for years, the worst judgment in other human beings I've ever met in my life. And I like Steve. I think he has populist instincts. I think he understands globalism as a problem, et cetera. But, personnel judgment, not so good. There are people trying to suggest that I was in the Epstein files. And what it is, there's articles about my legal work that turn in the files. I never knew Jeffrey. I knew not to take a Jeffrey Epstein invite. Let's put it that way. I think where it goes now is you're seeing a political rallying cry around the world. This has broken through the zeitgeist. This is one of those rare issues where normies talk about it. I get people that are totally apolitical come up to me and say, what is this? And is this happening? And is this happening? And they're searching Epstein at a record level around the world. If you go to Google search trends. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's a wake-up call. And now I think it'll take a little while for people to fully process and absorb the scale and scope and severity of the evil that they're witnessing, being so routinely and regularly. I love the torture video, smiley emoji. You know what I mean? You're like, hold on a second, what? But that was what's normal for them in that part of the world. You look at that so I think the public consciousness is going to continue to raise. Just like COVID, this is going to be a huge red pill moment for tons of people around the Western world. And you're already seeing it politically. Ro Khanna, who helped to get the files out, is out saying all of the future of politics is the working class versus the Epstein class. And you're going to see that definitional approach be used by insurgent campaigns in a sort of populist libertarian revolution that you're going to see continue to expand. It's already been building for the last decade as globalism failed, as the COVID pandemic red-pilled a lot of people. But I think you're going to see it accelerate because of the Epstein files, because everything ever said about these elites, how corrupt they are, how evil they are, how pernicious they are, how dangerous they are, all confirmed. In one case, after whether you're talking about war, whether you're talking about sinking economies, sinking currencies, rigging markets, all of it is there. Rigging elections, you name it. It's all there, piece by piece by piece by piece. And you can just throw a dart on anywhere in the Western power structure in the globalist world. Chances are you're going to hit somebody in the Epstein files in a bad way.
And that's just that's based on what we've seen so far. My point there is, who knows what's going to come out in the next 6 months or so, or in the next year. I mean, you could get to a point where 90% of the people that are in power right now around the world were somehow connected to this pure evil. You got to give a hat tip to Alex Jones as well, because back when I would listen to him occasionally, just bits and pieces, and maybe, I don't know, 15 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that, I'd listen to him go on one of these rants about how, the people in power were pedophiles and, possessed by demons and so on. I'd be like, okay, I totally get it. I totally agree that they're Nancy Pelosi doing insider trading and they're greedy and they have no ethical standards. Like, I totally get that. But pedophiles, I'm like, Alex, come on. Okay. It's taking a little too far here, right? But now it turns out that as suspicious and as oh boy, what's the right word? We'll use the word suspicious, I guess. It's not the word I'm thinking of. But as far as I took it, I didn't take it near far enough. And if anyone got close to the target there, it was Alex.
No doubt about it. I mean, even saying, these are satanic pedophile elites that want to eat your blood, you want to drink your blood.
Yeah, you hear that, you're like, nah, come on. I mean, insider trading for sure, greedy, evil. Yes, I get it. No morals, but that, that's crazy talk.
It seems over dramatic. It seems, the taking it to the edge. Pot-bellied goblins and all the rest. And then you're like, Alex, I think you kind of understated it here.
Yeah,
it's so surreal to watch. People thought he would be thrilled at being vindicated. He's horrified. He's like, I suspected this. I believed aspects of this, but this is so horrendous. He goes, I mean, I'm a father of daughters. I can't, even processing. I just want all these people to go right to the wood chipper. Just take them into the wood chipper, one after the other, because of how horrific it's seeing is. But these are the people who are setting us up for wars and have been for a century.
Exactly.
These are the people setting up our economic system and can sink it or rise it as they wish, as it personally profits them. These are the people running our food system, running our medical system, running our educational system, running our media system. They're all implicated all throughout the Epstein files. Major professors at our leading Ivy League institutions, at Harvard, at Yale, at UCLA, at Stanford, one after the other, after the other, after the other, eagerly involved in this complicity. Some of our leading Pinker's all over the place. Chomsky's even in there all over the place. So anybody that has any scientific or mathematical reputation is somehow implicated in the Epstein files more often than not. So what it shows is our elite has become corrosively corrupted for the last century. When we abandoned the American constitutional republic that said we do not go abroad searching for monsters to destroy, we do not have a big centralized federal state, we do not give them the power of a national central bank or a standing army, all of which we've now abandoned over the last century. What has happened? These are the people who rise to power. When you live by the devil's rules, you only end up with the devil in power.
Yeah, and here's, if people are going to take one thing away from this entire conversation, I think it should be this. The answer here is not just to run all the evil people out of government and get more Thomas Massie and Ron Pauls in there. That is not the answer. Because when the Ron Pauls and the Thomas Massies leave, who's going to fill the void? It's all the evil people will come back, or different their children or their grandchildren, or whatever, will come back and fill those roles. The only answer here is to reduce the size of the federal government. Because if the federal government didn't have any power, then the sociopathic people that have that insatiable lust for power wouldn't strive to be in government. They would be doing other things, other nefarious things, because they can't rule over other people if the government itself doesn't have the power to rule over people. So the answer here is you've got to shrink the federal government back down to, let's just call it 10% spending of GDP, if you want to measure it, quantify it that way. And you've got to get the power back into the states. You have to go back to the way this country was started. And then magically, all the lobbyists are no longer going to be there in Washington, D.C. anymore. Magically, the only people that are going to be running for election are going to be the Thomas Massie types that really want to do it for the right reasons.
Yeah, our wealthiest towns will be our factory towns and our farm towns, not Washington, D.C. suburbs or the big media enterprises or the Wall Street environment in L.A., New York, and D.C.
Yeah.
So we have to. I often say, that there's not a lot of spiritual problems that you can't find some answer to in the wisdom of the Bible. However, somebody's religious approach may be, there's a lot of wisdom in there. I say there's not many legal or policy problems you can't find an answer to in the Constitution of the United States of America.
There you go.
It designed our government to be a limited government, preserving and protecting rights of the people. And only those rights the people specifically gave up does even the state government have. And then only the powers they give up to the federal government does the federal government have. We have abandoned that for more than a century. We should have never had a standing army. We should have never given concentrated military power to a small group of people in Washington, D.C. That was inevitably going to be misused and abused to engage in global war. And that's all we've had for a century. War. We don't go a decade without a new war. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I want to highlight the word that I was trying to think of that I forgot, because I think it should be the one word of our discussion today, and that's cynical. Cynical. If you were not cynical before, you need to be cynical now. And however cynical you are, I assure you, you need to be more cynical on a move forward basis. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And what you've got to do is be cynical of giving power to a small group of people. They will inevitably and inescapably misuse and abuse that more often than not. Instead, restore power to the person. The whole point of the free market is to have minimal government involvement and empower ordinary people, the ordinary individuals. And if people aggregate power illicitly to monopolies, that's where the government can step in to restore the balance of the market. It's there to make sure the weights and the measures are accurate and that they're not inaccurate.
Another good word, decentralize.
Absolutely. Decentralized, individualized, democratized, but little d, not big D. The power to the people wherever you can at every level of governance and government, and as little of it in Washington, D.C. as possible.
I was just going to say, not just part of the people, but part of the people at a local level.
Exactly.
The local people should be making local decisions here.
Absolutely. Your food and medicine and water and all these education, that should all be at the local level. They shouldn't be at the state level, shouldn't be at the federal level. We should not have, as George's hat says, it's long overdue to end the Fed. We were never supposed to have a national central bank. We had campaigns against it. The Constitution was founded in opposition to it. Why do we have it now? These central bank planners want to impose a central bank digital currency so the Epsteins of the world, the Epstein class, can control us. Wherever the Epstein class has power is who we need to take power away from. And not only take it away from them as individuals, but take it away from them institutionally so they can never grab it or seize it again.
Yeah, but the end of the Fed is just a proxy and really a battle cry for end central planning. Central planning. If we reduce the size of the federal government, you open up free markets again, all of this that we're talking about, it's going to take it. It's going to work itself out. It's going to absolutely work itself out. Now, if I'm going to push back on this, Robert, I'm going to say, okay, look, the FBI or CIA or whoever accumulated these files, they were keeping track of everything. Literally everything. So if they do this over 20 years, then quite literally, there's going to be an email about every single famous person or every single person in power. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're all evil or they're all pedophiles or something like that. Jeffrey Epstein may have just sent an email to XYZ person and just mentioned whatever, Bill Gates. Right. And just because he said, oh, Bill Gates is the richest man on earth, and it was an email, now all of a sudden it's in the Epstein files. That didn't necessarily mean that Bill Gates did something wrong. So how do we differentiate the people that might be in the Epstein files as just, casually speaking about this person or someone that actually went to the island?
Well, it's what the Justice Department should have done, but they are deliberately obfuscating who is criminally implicated in the Epstein files by mixing in bogus reports with credible reports, mixing in people who are innocently named with people that are incriminated in the way they're named. So basically, it's going to be left to us to do the old. And there's a bunch of people creating it, a bunch of people creating sites where you can search it, independent of the Justice Department, creating the network so you can see the networks yourself, so that you can put it together yourself. And I think we have to restore it's a form of individual empowerment. I always say self-education is self-empowerment. Part of what your channel is all about, helping people get self-educated so they're more empowered to make good, consequential economic and other decisions for their well-being and to protect and promote their liberty. We need to employ our old analytical skills and grassroots journalist skills to take this data dump and put together who's really criminally implicated and who isn't. They deliberately threw it.
Put into ChatGPT, like isn't that what AI does?
Yeah, well, that's true. There's these people that are creating these huge algorithms of this database so that you can search it effectively. So you know the difference between now. In truth, if you know who some of these people are, like, is it a real shock that Bill Gates is incriminated in the file? I mean, Bill Gates wanted to give us the whole world a vaccine, and he was the number one promoter of the COVID vaccine, and he is busy trying to secretly drug his wife. According to Epstein himself, in Epstein's own disclosures to himself in an email he kept of the records, he wanted Gates and said, hey, can you give me a drug I can secretly drug my wife with so she won't know the STD I picked up from the latest hookers, Epstein's hookers I hung out with, right? It's not a surprise that Mr. Eugenicist would actually be on this agenda. So to some degree, you can use your common sense and look at broader patterns, but it's also a good investigative path. Everybody gets to be their own investigator now. Look at this information, look at what patterns are consequential, which ones are not, which ones make sense, which ones don't, which connections work, which connections don't work. So, for example, people trying to say that Bannon would be criminally implicated, unlikely. Epstein was pretending to be populist in order to sucker and snooker Bannon into defending him publicly and developing a relationship. That's who Epstein was, a master manipulator. You know from Bannon's other politics, unlikely. He's not a eugenicist. He's anti-globalist. All the rest, you can probably guess whether he's going to be negatively implicated or not. But it teaches you it's sort of a school of learning of its own kind, is going through the Epstein files and training your mind to be able to distinguish incriminatory information from innocent information,
but
like a
people don't have time
detective
to
does.
do that, Robert. People don't have time to do that. So
Oh, no, that's true. And that's why it's going
how can they get the signal through the noise? Can they follow your channel? Are you and Viva talking about this, or what would you suggest for the average Joe?
And we'll be putting up links so that people can process it. I did a bunch of hush-hush videos earlier in the year, which are kind of alternative narratives to the official narrative on Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell. I call it the Epstein trilogy, the Jeffrey Epstein. So people can, it helps frame and contextualize information. The other thing we're trying to do through those is teach people how to filter through information. Like if you're looking at a possibility of a false flag event, what do you look for? You look for unusual security lapses. You look for cui bono, who could gain and profit from it, so on and so forth. Just different techniques and tools of the trade, real true trade craft, so that you can filter through that information. And we'll be sharing links with other people who are doing this in live time at a grassroots level. Because one of the utility of the Epstein files is you had like the whole QAnon movement where they went on all these rabbit holes that were mostly weren't good. It was meant to distract grassroots journalists. The advantage of the Epstein files is it's a useful tool for those grassroots journalists to really apply their skill set. And wherever they apply good and useful information, we'll be sharing it at vivabarneslaw.locals.com, because I think it's a key to unlocking the understanding of this eugenicist elite that we've been describing now for a decade.
What are some of the other great journalists, independent journalists, doing with this, such as Matt Taibbi?
So Taibbi has covered it a little bit, but hasn't done a deep dive yet. Now,
Okay.
Whitney Webb, the only thing with Webb is sometimes Webb will just say there's an association and assume incrimination from that. And, I would like it if she was a little more disciplined in her analysis.
Yeah.
But she does at least help people draw the connections, even if the connections she draws the wrong conclusion from. But it will be, there's other people. Alex Jones is going to be covering this extensively, and he's going to be piece by piece by piece by piece. He's going to be covering it all the way through.
Is Rogan talking about this?
Joe Rogan has talked about so far only the White House covering it up. He hasn't done a deep, but he had Mike Benz on. There's a good person to follow, Mike Benz. So
Okay.
Mike Benz understands the money laundering side, the arms running side, the deep state
yeah.
side. Like the real files that they're still hiding are all the files that they're hiding. Half of the files with the Justice Department, over 3 million documents and videos and files. And according to Congressman Tim Burchett, who's also doing good work, Congresswoman Luna is doing good work, Congresswoman Nancy Mace is doing good work, Congressman Boebert is doing good work, along with Congressman Massey and Congressman Coe, to see what's still being hidden and then telling people what it is. Burchett said it's some of the most disgusting, grotesque, evil things he's ever seen in his life. So you'll have them doing some independent research, but Mike Benz is doing some good research. Alex Jones continues to do good research. A range of grassroots. Whitney Webb is doing her own form of it. The Redacted is covering it. Their channel, their podcast channel.
Okay.
So, and I think you'll see more and more people. Glenn Greenwald is covering bits and parts of it. He covered the part of Howard Lutnick just coming up with a totally bogus story. I mean, as a longtime observer of Howard Lutnick, I'm sure he really weren't all that shocked that Howard is not the most ethical, moral man on the planet. This is the guy who forgot to go to his offices on 9/11 and then pocketed all the insurance cash for himself instead of the victims. So
didn't he say that he went to the island for a family vacation or something?
Yeah, hey George, is that what you do? You bring your daughters. Hey, let's go meet Jeffrey Epstein, honey. His original story was, I ran to him once in 2005, and I was so disturbed I've never had business with him again. Not disclosing that, in fact, he went into deep business with him. Was exchanging his nannies. Well, what did Epstein need a nanny for? He didn't have any kids. So you can guess what that's going on there. And Lutnick's always given off that scuzzy vibe. He even bragged that
the vibe, yeah.
Oh, complete. He even bragged the reason why he backed Trump this time, he backed Hillary Clinton in 2016, was because Trump promised to be the most pro-Israel president in American history. And because his wife's obsessed with Israel. A lot of these Israel First donors are all over this. Not a surprise if people can go to the hush-hushes at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. But you can find it other places too. The Robert Maxwell ties, once Ghislaine Maxwell showed up, and I even asked Dershowitz years ago how he met Epstein. He said, well, he was vouched for by a very credible person. I was like, who was that? He said, Lady Rothschild. It's like, dude, you didn't realize you were being set up then? The Rothschilds? Is there one family that's been more responsible for more wars around the world in different ways than the Rothschild family? Now, in their defense, they bought the Lafite winery, and that is some beautiful wine. I will say, the Lafite Rothschild wine is great, but that's about the only thing good about the Rothschilds. I think as people dig into this, as people expose it, I think the red pill is just going. The people who want to exit the matrix will be exponential. Now, you have some people that will wake up and be like, put me back to sleep. Put me back to sleep. I want to pretend I'm eating steak and that I'm not governed by pedophile elites. But you're going to have enough people that do want to wake up, that do want to join Neo, and that we can finally crack the matrix once and for all.
Wow. So let's go into just some of the details that I haven't caught, because I've just been seeing the headlines, even on CNBC, and every single time I see another headline with some other person in power, I'm like, well, of course, like, this isn't a surprise to me. I guess what is a surprise to me is that it's so overwhelming now that the mainstream media is actually talking about it. It's like the Biden moment. I talk about that all the time in terms of the economy or the stock market. And what I mean by that is everyone is sitting there telling you that Biden is sharp as a tack, and they're doubling down on it, tripling down on it, until the evidence is so overwhelming because he has that debate with Trump on national TV. And then the mainstream media is like, we can't push this narrative anymore. And it's the Biden moment, and everyone, switches teams or switches narratives. And it's like, it seems like that's happened, fortunately, with the mainstream media and these Epstein files.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, and in Pam Bondi, her statement about the Dow 50,000. I mean, they've made songs into it. They've made a TikTok version. What would happen if
I didn't?
So Pam Bondi comes in before the hearing, and she starts off with a launching about the Dow's at 50,000. This is about the Epstein. Like, why are you here talking about the Epstein file? The Dow's at 50,000. The Dow's at 50,000. By the way, she almost said the Dow's at $50,000. Everybody like, hold on a second, $50,000? We're all screwed. The market just collapsed. And people start laughing. You're laughing when the Dow is at 50,000? So there's all these memes out there from like Game of Thrones, her forcing Epstein victims. Look at the Dow. Look at the Dow. It's over 50,000. There's, if you get arrested by a cop, and just say, hey, cop, come on. The Dow's over 50,000. Why are you pulling me over? You get caught cheating on your wife. Hey, don't worry, honey. Why are you worried about that? The Dow's at 50,000.
Okay, now I get the joke that you were saying at the beginning of the interview. I mean, I kind of got it, but not to the extent that I should have.
So that has been memed into. There's even what would happen if Pam Bondi was your waitress, and it's all the obstructive tactics she took during the thing as your waitress. It's like, I mean, she's everybody's nightmare of a certain caricature of rich white women telling you around. You know what I mean? It's just it was the worst political PR performance ever. So her disastrous performance. And then, you had Todd Blanche go out and they say, why aren't you investigating more people? He's like, yo, dude, it's not a crime to party with Epstein. Can you imagine making a dumber statement than it's not a crime to party with Epstein? And Trump pretended not to know that Lutnick went to the island. But in the same sentence, he said, but I heard he just went there with his wife and kids. And I was like, that sounds better to you? That you went to Epstein Island with your wife and kids? That sounds better? That sounds exculpatory? So, and then there's little stories. Like, it's coming out today that Obama's would-be attorney general was coordinating and conspiring with Epstein to cover up what was supposedly a secret. Remember the secret? This is your neck of the woods. Remember the Secret Service supposedly went down to Colombia and banged a bunch of hookers? And like 10 of them got fired. So this was like 2012, 13, somewhere in that neighborhood, Obama administration. It turned out the Secret Service people were innocent. That it was the donor, it was the son of a rich donor who banged a bunch of Colombian hookers. And in order to cover for him, they threw 10 different Secret Service people under the bus, and they coordinated the cover-up plan with Jeffrey Epstein. So, I mean, so you're getting like one little scandal a day, new little scandal this day, new little scandal this day, this country, that country, this country, that country. The Sultan that just had to step down, that was like head of a whole bunch of ports and everything else, was the one that Epstein was like, dude, I love the torture video you sent me. I mean, it's like, and they tried to hide his name. Les Wexner, Victoria's Secret. He's about to sink the Ohio Republican Senate candidate, took $100,000 plus from Les Wexner right before he turned around and said, let's not disclose the Epstein files. Of course, Wexner is all in the Epstein files. That's the founder of Victoria's Secret. That's the founder of a bunch of big high-profile. You have all of these big tech people with Palantir are implicated. It appears Palantir got its big contracts, starting with the Israeli government, thanks to Jeffrey Epstein working with Ehud Barak. So you got like one scandal after another. This thing has a scandal a minute. And so it's going to keep it more and more and more. And it's so many powerful people, so many connected people, so many high-ranking individuals in institutions of influence are going to get exposed and exposed and exposed. And what happens if they're ever forced to disclose the CIA files that they're hiding, the Treasury Department, bank financial files that they're hiding, the State Department files that they're still hiding? All of those, Bessent has refused to turn them over to Senator Wyden. The Treasury files, the money, you track the money. You're going to get a lot of interesting intel and information. Bank of America right now is being sued in New York because their own internal people said, hey, it kind of looks like this guy's using our accounts for human trafficking. And then they fired those whistleblowers, didn't disclose the suspicious activity reports that they had to the federal government. And so now they face a federal judge said this is going to go to discovery now. Well, when it went to discovery against J.P. Morgan, they just wrote big fat checks to go away because they knew how embarrassing that the banks are the key financial intermediaries for all of this criminality. Without the bank's complicity, without the bank's involvement, it couldn't have happened at the scale it did. So all of a sudden, the financial system is going to be exposed. And this is at a time when you have private capital and all the cockroaches trying to hide from exposure on that side of the aisle. So this is going to continue to ripple out across the economic and political sphere across the Western world until there's some meaningful accountability at somewhere, someplace, or these governments just collapse. And you're going to see government after government.
I hope so. But how, number one, how the hell did this guy get so much power? I mean, if you actually think about this, he might have been the most powerful person in the world. Like name someone that was more powerful than the president. I don't think so, because it sounds like Epstein had him by the short hairs. Whoever was in power, Epstein had him by the short hair. So how the hell did this guy get into such an incredible position of power and also not just to be in that position of power, but also to have a network where he literally knows everybody. Like he knew more people than I would argue Trump now. I mean, name the political figure right now that knows more people of influence than Epstein knew.
Well, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, because almost every actor is within 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon because of so many films he's in. Well, if you're in a position of power in the Western world, you are within 2 degrees of Jeffrey Epstein at a minimum. I mean, that's the scale. And how does it happen?
That's a good way to say it. Yeah. It's
really 2 things. One is just how it happened literally was Donald Barr recruiting him to go to the Dalton School. Donald Barr came from the OSS and intelligence world. The Dalton School is one of the most elite schools in the world. And he recruited him when he was unqualified to be there. So he was putting him in the right place to get connected to some of the most powerful, privileged people. He got run off from the school, by the way, because he kept harassing young girls. But that didn't stop him from getting all his connections. Donald Barr then goes and writes a sci-fi book where his ideal civilization is one that has a bunch of underage sex slaves. So, that gives you an idea who Donald Barr is. You can't even make this up. It's like The Simulation, but written by modern Disney writers rather than traditional Disney writers. That's why it has the more disturbed and sick and unsavory side. The other component of it is to your core point. What is Jeffrey who does he personify? He personifies the ultimate person who seeks and succeeds at seeking power. He's the ultimate sociopath. He's the ultimate conscienceless individual. He's the ultimate power for its own sake and depravity for its own sake individual. He personifies what happened, whatever happens, and what will always happen when you give a small group of people disproportionate tools and means of financial and military power. We will always be governed by Epsteins as long as we have a system of governance that gives power to only a small class of people.
How did they keep it secret? Like think about his network, what he was doing, how many people were involved. How the hell do you keep that a secret for even a month, let alone how old was he?
So let's see. I mean, he started this. He was born in the 50s. So he started this, and there were complaints against him beginning in the 70s, throughout the 80s. There were complaints of at all over the place. There were complaints in New York City, complaints in Miami, complaints in New Mexico, complaints in Columbus, Ohio, complaints in Santa Monica, California. Model went there in the early 90s, went to Shutters. He pulled this routine on her. She ran out, reported to local police. What would happen is it would ultimately magically and miraculously get filtered up to the FBI. And the FBI is the one that made sure every case went away. They say, we're taking care of this.
That makes more sense. That makes sense to me, because to just keep this under wraps at the scale that it was happening for 30 years, that doesn't make any sense to me. But if there's one choke point that controls all the information and whether it leaks, that to me makes all the sense in the world.
And people should look up Isaac Asimov's son was a massive producer of CP. And people can guess what that is, but we'll stay YouTube friendly for the language. In Robert Mueller, it was being prosecuted by the state in California. Robert Mueller takes over as U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of California, somehow during Clinton's era. That's a whole nother story, how a lifelong Republican got one of the prime gigs. He immediately takes over the case from the state authority, people. Ultimately cuts a sweetheart deal so that Asimov's kid not only walks, but he gets back the CP that they took from him that he had produced. This isn't just somebody that is purchasing it. This is someone that is producing CP. And why? So that Mueller could have control over the list. A decade later, at the Alex Acosta and other FBI files would show that the reason why they had to give him a sweetheart deal was that Robert Mueller identified him as an asset of the intelligence community and an informant, because the federal government the small control of the deep state wants to have monopoly on those lists. They don't want Joe Schmo to have access to those lists because it's the ultimate extortion blackmail material.
So that's how we got to where we are today. So how do you think it plays out with the Clintons? And then what's going on with the Goldman Sachs gal?
So she finally had to step down. She was the one that was connected to who would have been Obama's attorney general that was trying to cover up the Columbia scandal on behalf of a big donor in cahoots with Epstein. And she would love to brag about all the little gifts that Epstein would send her. Oh, I've got this purse and I've got these shoes. I mean, it tells you the mindset of these people. You know, making $25 million a year at Goldman Sachs. What was she doing for $25 million a year at Goldman Sachs? Probably the same kind of thing Jeffrey Epstein was doing, getting $45 million from Lady Rothschild. So I think politically, this is disastrous for anybody who gets close to it. You're going to see a mantra of working class versus Epstein class take over politically in the zeitgeist, not only in the U.S., but across the Western world for the better part of the next half decade, maybe decade. This issue is not going away. And the only question for Trump is, does he continue to sabotage himself by going, by letting Bondi and Blanche and Patel continue to run this rogue cover-up operation? Or does he cut bait, fire all of them, put someone like Tom Fitton in, put somebody that people have public confidence in, just let the chips fall where they may, and let the consequences go? Because why does he want to bear the brunt of it? Otherwise, he will go down as one of the least popular presidents in history. They will see him as the Epstein administration, the Epstein protector, the Epstein president, especially if he's dumb enough and gets snookered into going to war with Iran, which appears we are on literally the eve of doing so for the same Epstein class group of people. So how Trump handles it will dictate his future. Does he go the Nixon route or does he go the recovery route? And
is his base like the true MAGA base? I mean, I know the true MAGA base is really into or concerned with, let's say, the Epstein files, as well they should be. But has he dropped in popularity as a result of just what's happened over the last few weeks?
He's sinking like a rock. So 1776 Law Center that supports a lot of we're doing a nationwide survey as we speak to test the popularity of food freedom, medical freedom, political freedom, financial freedom. But we're looking at the context of how the Epstein file cases resonate with people, how many people are paying attention, how many people have understanding, but also how it's impacting both parties. Like the senator in Ohio is going to lose the Republican Senate seat. in Ohio, because right now Democrats are running nonstop ads saying this guy's an Epstein protector and is part of the Epstein class and took a, it's killing. We tested out the popularity. John Ossoff was running on this 2 weeks ago in Georgia, Democratic senator. He was like, we want to stand for the working class, not the Epstein class. And the whole crowd went nuts. And we're testing that. Popularity's off the charts. That message.
I'm not in the U.S., so I don't really have my finger on the pulse of this stuff.
Yeah, so it politically is taking off. It's taking its own zeitgeist, its own energy. Right now, for example, amongst people who know every candidate, so like Thomas Massey is recognized by about half the country. Thomas Massey gets close to 20% of the presidential vote as an independent in 2028, the highest rate since Ross Perot in '92. That's just with only half the country knowing who he is. So the half the country that knows who he is, they would prefer Thomas Massey to either of the other candidates at a rate that we have not seen in modern American political history.
Yeah, so Trump's got to get his ego out of the way and just if he wants to, achieve whatever he's trying to achieve, and he needs that popularity back to do it. He's got to realize that I don't know how Trump's never admitted that he was wrong about anything. So I don't know how he would.
He can do it by implication. The way he tends to do it is to just change direction, and and pretend it was always his idea all along. Just cut them all loose. Say, see, now I got the Democrats on board with the Epstein file disclosure. I'm glad they finally joined me. I want full disclosure. I want full investigations. I don't have, Pam Bondi, God bless her. She's going to retire now. And Todd Blanche, God bless him. He's going to retire now. Swampy Susie, God bless her. She's going to retire now. And you put people in charge that actually care about the voters rather than the donors. And he could reverse course and restore his credibility very quickly. But he's got to do it. He's got to do it fast. Otherwise, he will bleed out politically on an open table.
What happens to the Clintons? What's going on with them first and foremost? And then how do you see that playing out?
So the two things that are happening in the background, the reason why a bunch of Democrats are for Epstein file disclosures, even though Democrats are implicated all the way through, is they hate their Epstein class portion of the Democratic Party just as much as anybody else. So that's why they are the number one target is the Clintons. The Democrats want the Clintons to hang. They want the Clinton because the Clintons did so much sabotage to the Democratic bench and the Democratic base of political support. You had to be with them or they ran you out of the party for about 30 years. There's a bunch of people with personal vendettas that want to get it back at them. So they are going to be thrown under the bus. Both Bill and Hillary, they're going to be sacrificed Epstein style to get rid of them. So this new guard of Democratic class people that are more Bernie Sanders aligned, more left populist aligned, they can seize the reins of political power. Now, they're trying to get AOC to be part of those people, but she didn't realize Venezuela's still north of the equator when she was over there the other day. I don't know if you saw that. But she's like, we shouldn't be taking over a country just because they're south of the equator. And everybody's like, Venezuela's not south of the equator. She didn't even know where the equator was. Well, leave that to AOC. The political waves are coming. And it's how long can they just say, let them eat cake, let them eat the S&P in order to keep them at the gate. Things like this are people like, hold on a second. I have to draw the line at pederast. I have to draw the line at pedophiles. I have to draw the line at eating babies.
When you say thrown under the bus of the Clinton, what do you mean? They're
not going to politically protect him. They're going to let him get exposed in the depositions. They're going to let information and documentation that incriminates them get published. They're going to let it. They're going to let them be taken out.
They don't, because can you even? How does that work with someone who's a former president? Can you even, they're above the law, aren't they?
Oh well, I mean, they proved when they indicted Trump that precedent is no longer. So they can, so people can indict Clintons. Expose the Clinton Foundation. People still haven't put together the Clinton Foundation's role in Haiti in a lot of these adoption groups and where those little children ended up. So I mean, it's not only Clinton's personal use of the Epstein favors, you might say, that it's problematic. It's that the Clinton Foundation was deeply embedded with the Epstein class. It was one of the Epstein class for a lot of their financial operations, including human trafficking, including arms running, including money laundering, including regime change and coups around the world. So there's so much scandal there to be exposed. And if Democrats are not willing to protect them and even have personal vendettas and would like to see them exposed, there is a lot there to be exposed. And I think that's coming.
Personally, do you think? What's your base case?
I wonder how long they live. They're older. Hillary never struck me as the beacon of public health. Billy Boyd never also really, the beacon of public health. I think Hunter Thompson once said, the question isn't what Bill Clinton is addicted to, is there anything he's not addicted to? And Hunter nailed it. So I wonder how long they live physically. They also know where a lot of bodies are buried. So when Ron Brown had this debate with Bill Clinton during his first term, Clinton was like, I'm sure your son can be taken care of. I can make sure he's not criminally implicated in the ongoing case. I just need you to take a commerce trip to a war-torn region for me, Ron. Ron didn't come back from that plane trip. I think the Clintons are going to get a Clinton-style offer you can't refuse. We'll see how long they're around 5 years from now, quite literally.
Just another conspiracy theory that if you would have said anything derogatory or negative about the Clintons, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. It's like, name one major conspiracy theory since the cerveza sickness that wasn't true.
Exactly. It's basically been Alex Jones's right jar. The jar isn't big enough to fill it up with everything, since between COVID, the election, 2020 election, COVID, and the Epstein files, everything's proven beyond anybody's imagination, wildest, sickest. I was like, there's not even horror films that have all the things that are in the Epstein files in it. It's just.
But the thing that, though, Robert, is you're talking about people being red-pilled. But if people were even open to being red-pilled, wouldn't they already be red-pilled based on everything that has happened since 2020? I mean, that's kind of my concern here, is that it's not like this Epstein file just totally came out of right field and everything was just hunky-dory prior to this. You just did. You listed about 5 things there that should have opened your eyes to what we're talking about and what the Epstein files exposed, right? Going back to, you should have realized that no matter how cynical you were after the cerveza sickness, you weren't cynical enough, right? So do you think that this truly is a red pill moment, or do you think it's just we keep trudging along here in the same direction because anyone that's still blue pilled to this point has no hope of being red pilled? That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah. I think the difference is this got through to the normie, the apolitical normie, who thought maybe things were a little squirrely during COVID, but they weren't immersed in the rhetoric or language, and they trusted.
You don't think the whole vax thing got through to the normie? I mean, look at the rates of what do they call it? The bonus shots or the booster shots.
Yeah.
I mean, that just fell off a cliff.
So, no doubt. I think it got them to enough to where your normie was not necessarily thinking it was a big conspiracy, but like, maybe this isn't really that trustworthy, so I'm not going to take it.
Okay.
But that's where they were, because I dealt with a lot of them in a wide range of contexts.
Okay.
So whereas this has just broken through in ways that it's so surreal, it's so insane that it is consuming attention in ways that other things rarely break through. It's usually hard. Like COVID broke through a lot of normies, but not all the normies. Like people that I know in my everyday life that are very apolitical, that were like a little bothered by COVID, but weren't quite sure. Like, I can't believe they really intended to do that. And then they see what Bill Gates is capable of. And they're like, well, hold on a second. I need to re-examine what I thought about COVID. Right. So it's reaching that normie on the street person who normally is disconnected from politics. Normally it's not part of their daily diet. They're just worried about getting to work on time and getting groceries that are affordable and that kind of jazz. It's broken through to them. It's on all social media platforms, in their individual interactions. They can't get enough of it for many of them. And they're like, oh my goodness, all this was true all along. And that's where I think it's breaking through at a level of public consciousness you've never seen before. When you have members of Congress talking about the way they are, that's not, you're back to where we were when MK Ultra got exposed, when the assassinations got exposed by Frank Church's committee in the late 70s. That's the only time historically where something broke through the public consciousness to where people are like, hold on a second. People who'd always believed that Kennedy's assassination was legit, it was only a crazy conspiracy theory for anyone to question it. After those committee hearings were like, oh, I'm not so sure anymore. That's what I think Epstein files ramifications will be around the world. Plus, because the internet, the media tried to gatekeep this. They tried not to cover it. Mainstream media tried to bury most of these Epstein files. It doesn't matter because of social media's independent accessibility for people. So they can see it on TikTok, and they can see it on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and Rumble and everywhere else. They can get access to it. And consequently, their gatekeeping control has collapsed, and the truth is getting out there one way, shape, or form. And I just think it will red pill a new person every single day for the next 10 years.
So where do you think we are in 10 years? As far as what does the federal government look like? What does our leadership look like in 5 to 10 years? How is it different than what we've grown up with over the last 50 years or so?
It's a V for Vendetta world. We're either going to go with more dystopian, totalitarian, oligarchic control in response to these exposures of terrified elites resorting to the most extreme mechanisms, methods, and means to manipulate the population and suppress their resistance, or we get a V for Vendetta style rebellion where we restore the constitutional republic and its principles of liberty and freedom in the United States. And it can go either direction. It's at a knife's edge. And over the next 10 years, it will go dramatically, in my opinion, one or the other. What you will not see 10 years from now, in my opinion, is something that looks like what the last 20 years has been. These kind of normie-controlled politics and policies. You're either going to have dystopian oligarchy or radical return to to constitutional republic principles. One or the other is going to win out because it's a do-or-die battle for the future of civilization itself.
What signs would you look for to determine which direction we were going?
Public consciousness is the main one I'm looking at. The more people understand, it was the point of the movie V for Vendetta, right? It's like once enough of the public has turned, then there's only, they don't censor you because your opinion doesn't matter. They don't try to manipulate you because your opinion doesn't matter. They know it's the fifth pillar of power underneath the other four pillars of power. And that fifth pillar of power is the public perception and confidence and credibility in the other four pillars of power. The U.S. government used to train this at the Einstein Institute to destabilize and create color revolutions all the way back to the 1990s. They explained that public consciousness is the key aspect to true public control. Control public consciousness, you can control even political rebellions and revolutions that might otherwise succeed. So that's the thing to watch and monitor. How much is the public consciousness red-pilled and awake? How much of them want to exit the matrix rather than stay in? Those two things will dictate and determine whether the country goes to its constitutional republic roots or to a totalitarian oligarchic roots. Where is the public consciousness? What degree of awareness is there? How much do we see action and consequence from it? Not only see these other governments fall, but see rise of new independent candidates and rise of new third-party candidates, U.S., U.K., other places. That will be the sign, okay, the revolution and reformation is on its way. If we don't see that, if we see people act like in COVID and defer to powers that be, then we're on the path to totalitarian control, and good time to have a plan B.
Jeez. Well, you're going to have to give us an update on all of this at Rebel Capitalist Live. You're going to be there speaking at the end of May. We'll put a link in the description if people want to get their tickets to that. But there's just so much going on in the world today, not only in markets, not only with economics, but also with just what really, really matters at the end of the day. And that's just good versus evil. I mean, that's literally, and tyranny versus freedom. And that's where we are right now in the world, whether we like it or not. This is not the time to bury your head in the sand.
It's the opposite. There's no better time to be active than now. Be self-informed and self-engaged. Have your plan B and your contingency plan set up in case you feel the heat around the corner from the wrong side prevailing, but do everything possible so the wrong side doesn't prevail in the first place. Yeah. I think it was like the last Epstein episode we did. I think you described it well. It said very enlightening and terrifying. Hopefully we continue in that motif, but if people should use that information to empower themselves to make themselves and the world a safer and better place. And there's no better time to do it than now. And that's what the Epstein files reveal is the need, the necessity, and exigency of returning to our Republican roots, little r Republican roots, to restore power to the people and to free markets and free people and free societies away from centralized governments, EU or US style, because we see that leads to the empowerment of the Epstein class, and they will literally have us all for dinner.
And the only way we can do that is reduce the power of the government. And that's so hard for people, because if the government or the politicians are saying things you like, then people want to give them more power because they're saying things I like, and they're doing things I want them to do, and therefore I want to give them more. It's good that they have more power. It's good that they can get around the Constitution. We have to realize that if we continue to do that, even if they're doing things that you want, we're going down that path, the bad path that you talked about before, where it's this dystopian V for Vendetta society. It's the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And if you give the federal government even more power to do something you like from a guy or gal you like, sooner or later, there's going to be someone in the Epstein class, most likely sooner, that's going to take that power and use it against you, and horrifyingly, potentially against your kids, against just to create pure evil. Whether it's Malthusian, whether it's eugenics, you name it. Where can people find out more about what you do, buddy?
Absolutely. Centralized power is the devil. And when you dance with the devil doesn't change. The devil changes you. So always remember that. For all the content, you can go to all the hush hushes, all the alternative narratives about, I think we have 83 up there. Got a bunch of other intel information. Great community, very robust. That's at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And if you want to meet me in person, we'll be there at Rebel Capitalist Pro in Orlando, Florida. Breaking down the Epstein files, but also breaking down Plan B options and contingencies so that you don't get Epsteined, as they say, and all the rest. It'll be fun and always good and fun to be on.
Jeez. All right, buddy. Thanks for coming on. As always, my mind is blown, and it was, I guess, it was revealing. It was entertaining. It was enlightening and terrifying. How's that?
Perfect.
We'll see you next time. Hopefully our next conversation is a lot more boring. We'll keep our fingers crossed, right?
Indeed. Thanks, everybody.